Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2025 Prep Series here at Astrology Hub. We do a series every year for the year ahead. But because the astrology of 2025 and even into 2026 is so significant, this year we decided to focus this series on the voices of living legends within the field of astrology. These are some of our most seasoned and experienced wisdom keepers. And we're all looking for that special kind of perspective only they have to help us navigate these extraordinary times that we're living in. So today we have one of those extraordinary individuals. I'm honored to be joined by financial astrologer Georgia Stathis, who's here to give us not only her take on the year ahead, but also bring in some of the financial considerations we can keep in mind as we move forward. Georgia, I am so thrilled to be welcoming you back to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here again.
All right. Well, let's dive in, Georgia. Let's start with the big picture of 2025. What are the biggest transits that you have your eye on? And are you in agreement with some of the conversations I've been having with astrologers about the quote unquote bigness of the astrology of 2025 and 2026? Do you think that it's especially significant?
Yeah, I think that 2025 and 2026 is significant because many of the outer planets that, I call the outer planets the ones that are really in control because they're more destiny kinds of planets. They're all between last degree of a sign, 29 degrees, and 0. They're going back and forth, starting on November 19th of this year, 2024, when Pluto finally goes into Aquarius and stays for 20 years. But next year, we're going to have Saturn going from Pisces to Aries, then going back to Pisces. We're going to have Neptune going from Pisces to Aries and going back to Pisces. We're going to have Uranus, which is the big dealer. I call it the awakening to the soul's purpose, changing in the summer months into Gemini, which I love for a few months. Then it's going to go back to Taurus. So yeah, there's a lot of big changes, but it may likely be because they're all at 29 degrees, which is the anaretic degree, not the time to really see all the outcomes of how the change is going to be until closer to spring and summer of 26. And I tend to be more conservative because people are conservative, generally speaking, in terms of, do I really want to make a change or do I really not want to make a change? And this is the dilemma I think that everybody is having right now. I'm doing a series of lectures on the 29th degree this year. And the thing about the 29th degree, in many ways, it's what we call, it's in the void. The void, of course, means when a planet is at the place where it's not having any conversation with any of the other planets. Therefore, it's sort of like a wild card. It's kind of out there, Wild West kind of thing. And the other part, though, of the 29th degree is it's a collective or collection of all the stuff. Like for Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces, all the things of the last 14 years, the culmination, all that stuff that's in this deep incubation phase. There's a term in psychology, you incubate and then you're inspired. There's incubation period, then there's the inspiration. This is an incubation. This is a hibernation. A lot of that we don't see that's coming isn't coming completely until we really get to 26. But we're going to have like sparks or indicators of change, like flashes of, oh, this is interesting, and it'll be really interesting, and then it's going to go away. In our personal lives, in terms of how we want to change the way we live and the way we work, and where we want to live, which a lot of people are considering right now what to do with. But in political stuff, in cultural things, in technology things, it's the transition period. Now, there's two trains of thought with this. Astrology people say the void, if you're studying horary, for example, means it's too late to do anything, too late to tell. So you have to wait till you get into the 3rd degree for it to know what's really happening. But Musashi, who was not an astrologer, but was an ancient samurai, who wrote, they used to use this in the MBA programs, a book called The Book of Five Rings. He was the head of a samurai school. And the book has 5 chapters. One is the earth, one is the water, the fire, and the wind. But the last chapter, which is like 2 pages, is the book of the void. And in his view, it was in the void where all the magic happens. And that's what I see happening. We don't see things when planets are 29 degrees. We just know what we don't want to keep anymore. And what we can't keep anymore, we discard. So I think this next year, especially the first 6 months of next year, are going to be a lot of discarding of beliefs, of structures, literally physical structures as well as mental structures, discarding of things, discarding of careers, discarding of bosses, discarding of old goals that we thought we couldn't live without. I mean, it's just a lot of discarding, which is hard to do when you're a human being because we have our things, right? But the thing that's happening also is that Neptune, which also rules the soul, is also one of these 29-degree planets. And we had souls before we had bodies. Bodies have things. Bodies have to have things to sustain themselves. Souls don't have anything like that. So is this maybe what is happening, especially when Neptune's going to 29 Pisces, going back 29 Pisces until spring of 2026? Is this a time to reconnect with our souls? What does your soul want? Not what your parents think you should be doing, not what your husband or wife wants you to be doing, not what your kids think you should be doing, not, even if you have a great reputation in your industry and your ego is holding on to it, right? Is this really what your soul wants? And I think that that's the big stuff, which isn't probably like what a lot of people are saying. The big stuff is calling home our souls. It's not a task-oriented period. It's an experiential period. It's about taking bunches and bunches of side roads over the first 6 months, especially of 25, because we're going to have a really interesting series of events happening December 6th of this year, 2024. Mars, which usually motivates us to move in a certain direction, Mars is going to go retrograde all the way to the end of February of next year and doesn't really catch up to where it left off until May. So Mars going retrograde can get you off a track. You think you're going to go this way, but you're really going this way. Then very shortly during this period, Venus goes retrograde March 1st, just after Mars goes direct. Venus is our values. What do we value? What do we desire? Who do we want to be in relationship with? What do we want? And defining differences between wants versus needs. She's retrograde all the way through April 12th, and she doesn't catch up to where she left off until May 17th. So we're looking at the first 4 months of the year, and during that time, we're going to have Neptune is at its shadow position of 2955 Pisces, the void position on March 30th, and Neptune goes into Aries March 30th. So I really feel what's going to happen after spring equinox. A lot of people are going to just say, screw it, I'm going to just go do this. That's what I think people are going to do. They're going to leave jobs that aren't working, leave positions that aren't working. Positions may leave them. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. But, I've seen charts with lots of 29 degrees, especially when they're doing progressions or solar arcs. And I notice when those things roll over to the beginning of a sign, that suddenly that person is in a completely different place.
Wow. Okay, so a couple things I heard. In essence, because a lot of these big outer planets are at 29 degrees throughout 2025, there's a little bit of like a 29-degree
back and forth. Yeah, right.
Yeah. That 29 degrees can mean an incubation. It's like right before we're actually birthed into something very new. So we're gestating, we're incubating.
That's the word. Yes.
Okay. And that a lot of it is going to be around the soul. And so what does the soul actually really want? Not, again, like all these different identities that we may have built up.
Right.
Other people's expectations, our own expectations, all of that kind of up for refresh and reconsideration. So what does the soul really want? And that the first part of 2025 is going to be very experiential. I was telling you before we came on that normally by this time of the year, we have our Astrology Hub plan for the year ahead like completely baked and very clear. This year, I'm like, wow, it feels like there's a lot of unknown. It feels like there's a lot of potential. Somebody on my team today said, when nothing is planned, anything is possible.
That's right. Because there's spaces in between time. This is space between time. That's what Neptune is space between time. Time is Saturn, Capricorn. Neptune is space, you know, and it's important even if you do, because a lot of people still have pretty hard schedules where they have, they're working 12, 13 hours a day during this very difficult time. Make yourself go outside, away from people and away from any sort of media, which is also a crazy maker. Okay. And just, ask yourself who you are and not allow, and this is easy to say, it's not so easy to do because I've dealt with it my whole life, not allow the fear to take over identifying your soul. There will be people in the world who will not connect with their souls. That will happen. There's no question about it. And that is when our turmoil begins. That's when turmoil begins. When a people or a global community does not connect with the soul, and soul's real deep issues. And we were talking about this earlier. I just came back from my hurricane issue in Florida, and people were super kind because of this catastrophe. Not that they aren't usually, but people were helping people that were strangers. And I see this all the time when we have like you had the fire in Maui, we've had earthquakes here, we've had fires here. Why is it that when we have all these crises in the world, this is when people are nice to each other and the soul comes out because the stuff is gone. When stuff is gone, the soul has to be there, right? And do you have a soul? Is it there? Or have you left it someplace on the side of the road somewhere, So this is what I think 2025 is really about. And if you look at the number, 2025 is a 9. And 9 is the number in numerology that gives itself up to all the other numbers. That's the thing. I work with these number things all the time. That's why 90-degree angles, 180-degree angles, 180, 45 degrees, 4 and 5. Those are the nines. And when those aspects are happening in a horoscope, there's a transition taking place. 9 is always the end.
This is so good, Georgia. I want to circle back to something that you said before I do that. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please hit subscribe. It really helps us get this content out to more people. So there's people you think in your life that could benefit from the perspectives that are shared here. Make sure you subscribe. Okay. Something you said that I haven't heard any astrologers say, I don't think. You said you're excited for Uranus to move into Gemini.
I love it.
I don't normally hear excitement surrounding Uranus and Gemini because I know it also is associated with some really big historical things in the past. So tell us what you're excited about and what you think it's going to mean.
Okay, so I'm going to go down this very strange path. Okay.
Yeah.
So Uranus in modern astrology is the ruler of Aquarius, which is the magician. Okay. Aquarius is the magician. Uranus has a lot of bad press with a lot of astrologers and because it brings chaos. But the only time it really brings a lot of chaos into your life is when you're really not willing to let go of the things you should be letting go of, that you should be letting go of, and then it blows things up in your face, right? But if you're already listening to your inner voice, Uranus can come along and put you in the right place at the right time. But Uranus normally rules Aquarius. Okay. Gemini is also an air sign. So Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, which is an air sign, and Gemini is an air sign. They work together. It's an energy that works together. Now, Gemini is the sorcerer's apprentice. If you ever saw Fantasia, I know that's a really old, but it's a famous Disney animation that was done many years ago, where you have Mickey Mouse as the sorcerer's apprentice who really screws things up. And then you have the old magician who's, doing everything magically, and he thinks he's ready. And he does stuff, and the brooms go out of control. So in a way, in the beginning of Uranus and Gemini, it's kind of like AI, there could be a lot of crazy things going on. We're already seeing, chatbots and deep fakes and all kinds of things. But the magician part of this is ideas, problem solving. Gemini is known to be the problem solver. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, who is the only god in the mythological pantheon that can go into the underworld and go out of the underworld unscathed. Gemini is the character that you always see in all the fairy tales. That's the conscience for the hero or the heroine, like Jiminy Cricket, Pinocchio, by Gemini, Uranus and Gemini, right?
Yes.
Tinkerbell is Peter Pan's conscience.
Oh,
The seven dwarfs, which I call the seven little chakras, are Snow White's consciousness. So this is about waking up to problem solving, waking up to, well, if we did go into hell a little bit, what would it feel like if we did it this way? You know, I mean, taking risks that are intelligent risks, not stupid risks, you know, but it's just there for a little brief moment and then it's going to go back. You know, Uranus goes back. I've got the dates here from my calendar. July 7th of next year, Uranus enters Gemini. It will only be there until it retrogrades back to Taurus on November 7th. But we have a window here, July, August, September, October. We got about a 4-month window where some really great opportunities could show up for people. Look to see where's Aquarius in your chart, because Uranus changing signs is going to activate the house that is ruled by Aquarius, not only the house it's in. So there's might be an idea, or you run into a person, or you read an article in those 4 or 5 months. Go, oh, I should explore this. Maybe I should explore this. Maybe it's something to look into. And then you put it away. And then when Uranus goes back to Gemini, which it will do April 26th of 2026 and stay for 7 years, you're dressed for the party.
okay. So pay attention to opportunities and ideas and things that are happening between July 7th and November
7th. Yes.
Yes. And then there's going to be another little incubating period.
Yes.
And then it'll come back around
April 26th of the following year.
In the spring of 2026. Okay. But we'll be ready because we will have been aware and mindful as these ideas come in to pay attention and to see what's coming up. Yes.
Yes. And the other part of this too, which is very nice, because Pluto, we all know we've been waiting. I can't wait till Pluto gets out of Capricorn. I mean, I just can't wait. Pluto will still be in the early degrees of Aquarius because it only moves about 2 degrees a year. So look at this one. July, Uranus goes to 0 Gemini. Pluto will be around 3 or 2 Aquarius around July. So Uranus and Pluto will be trine during this period. That's a good aspect. And if anybody has any early Libra in their chart, that's a really good window of opportunity, by the way. Anybody who's got early degrees of Libra, because that's going to be like a triumvirate forming, a grand trine during that time of ideas.
Hmm. And what was the date range? You said July?
Pluto is retrograde on May 4th around 3 Aquarius. And then Uranus goes into Gemini on July 7th. So in this period of time between around July and around the fall months, during this whole, when Uranus is in Gemini, it's trining Pluto. So this is good for ideas for making money. Pluto is investments also. It could be a lot more thinking bigger rather than smaller, because Uranus, as Catherine DeJersey used to teach me in Chicago, Uranus is the sign of the big dealers, not the little dealers. In other words, if you have, like you've got a book coming out, and we were kind of talking about this, maybe it'll have babies, right? So, you know, the projects that you love, maybe you can offset those into other things and look at more as a satellite branches of something one is doing.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Could be also some very interesting partnerships could show up during this time as well. Because we're also going to have in July of next year, we're going to have Jupiter going into Cancer, which is going to be really nice because Jupiter in Cancer is what we call exalted, which might be more people caring about more things then, because Cancer is also the moon, and, you know, more caring goes on with Jupiter in Cancer. But in order to get to B, you got to go through A. And so what is going on right now? Well, right now, since late August through late December of this year, 2024, Jupiter and Saturn are in a 90-degree square to each other. And this is when people decide to chuck parts of their businesses. Anytime you have a hard aspect between Jupiter and Saturn, you chuck, which means get rid of a portion of your business. You watch your spending because Saturn is slower than Jupiter and the slow planets always win. Jupiter, which is fortunate, is in Gemini right now in an opening square. So you can actually see what you need to get rid of. Opening squares are very different than closing squares. Because
Yes.
a square is not just a square, it has different meanings. But an opening square, you have more of a perspective on how you're going to manage and get rid of what you don't need and don't let anything else in that doesn't work until these opportunity moments show up.
Mm.
That's hard to do.
It is hard to do, but Georgia, it sounds like we're in that right now. Again, so we're in that right now as this is airing. We're going to be in that for the first part of next year.
Right.
And the focus and the emphasis is more on the like clearing space for something very new. So, like you said, maybe people are going to be leaving their jobs. Maybe they're going to be moving. Maybe they're going to be like, I've been working on a project to totally change my podcast space because I want to make space for something that I don't even know what it is yet.
And that's perfect what you just said. You're making space for something. This is for everybody. You're making space now for something you don't know anything that you're going to do.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense logically,
Right.
but it does make sense spiritually.
Yes. Okay. So amazing. Do you see any advances that will make a significant difference in the financial field in 2025, 2026?
That's a hard one to call because I talk to a lot of business financial people and there's this kind of transition period. They're not sure either. But one of the things we are seeing a lot of, and I don't know how I feel about it yet, we're seeing investments rather than in hard assets, going from hard assets to what they call light assets. In other words, light assets is something that's not tangible, like land, like a website is a light asset because it doesn't have any tangible structure underneath it. It does, but it's different than land or a house or whatever. I think the issue, this is an opinion, but it's based on some historical data that I did when I did a currency workshop a few years ago. Every time you see Pluto entering an air sign historically, and that could either be Aquarius, where it's going to go pretty soon, Gemini, which it did during the Medici period way back in the 1500s, or the other sign, whatever that one is, the other air sign, Libra. Historically, every time, and actually that happened when Pluto went into Libra, we went off the gold standard. So what happens is until Pluto in an air sign goes to about 3 degrees of the air sign, which we're going to get to briefly in May of next year when it goes retrograde, but then it has to go back to 2. We really won't get to 3 permanently until 2026. This is between now and then. There's a lot of different kinds of currency formats that are tried. People scramble because what's happening in the global economy is there's so much change going on that they're trying this currency or devaluing this or bringing this currency in or making this one. It's confusing. And every single time Pluto was moving between 0 and 3 degrees of an air sign, there was a lot of chaos in the currency markets. And as far as other economic things, I think we're going to see with Saturn, Neptune conjoining, not officially till spring of 26. It'll get real close next year, but it doesn't really happen until spring of the following year. That we're going to see, we won't see the interest rates drop to 4 or 3 anymore. I mean, it used to be 9% was pretty good deal, so at 5 and 6%, it's not that bad. But we may see, because of the major movement of people, that prices for housing or the cost of housing changes markedly for the better so that more people can afford housing. There's that. I think a lot of people will be relocating to other places. I think that's definitely, there's a mass migration going on between not only Americans within states, but I think it's happening globally. I think a lot of Americans will go to other countries. That's what I see happening. In fact, I'm talking to a couple of my relatives that are getting Greek passports, which is very interesting, A lot of stuff is incubating right now, bubbling, coming along, so it's exciting, really.
Well, and for people listening who want to know personally what they can do to prepare themselves, I'd love to broaden this and also get your perspective on what people can do mentally, emotionally, spiritually to really thrive through this time, not just survive through it, but really take what we know about the astrology and the invitation and use it for our benefit to live the lives that we came here to live.
Well, practically speaking, for your personal, nobody wants to ever hear this, but I'm going to say it because I just did it again for my family. Make a budget. I know that sounds so incredibly dumb, but it is not dumb. And I have that free spreadsheet, that we have available at our website. I think you had it available too, where you can pop in the numbers and it'll change all the numbers automatically. When you do that, you start to see, geez, I'm spending $350 a month on streaming services. Now that $350 a month, is that what you value? Right? Because Venus is what we want, what we need. Is that what we value? I think that's the place to start. It's not, and nobody wants to do that. Everybody you say do a budget. Oh, I don't really think I need to do that. Yeah, you do, because all these things are coming in from your email, from your mail, from your text, your bills are being automatically paid. It's really easy, especially with Neptune at 29 Pisces, to go, well, it's all being taken care of. That's like living in a cloud, right? When you really sit down and go, oh my God, I'm paying $3,500 a year for this, this makes a difference. And I'm not being cheap. I always tell my kids, I'm not cheap. I'm just careful. Okay. Because if you can do this, and it's kind of a fun, I look at it as a game. Because if I were to go into looking at a budget, like, oh God, I look at it as a game. I didn't know I was spending this kind of money on this. I don't really need that. That's Saturn and Pisces also. What toxic waste do you need to process out of your life? What toxic people do you need to process out of your life? I know the budget sounds like such a basic thing, but it is really important. Okay. That's the first thing. And then when you're doing that, you check in with your own compass. I call it my moral compass. Is this car that I'm buying, okay, that I want to get, that's a really nice car, is that going to really make me happy? And it takes time to do that. And it also means you have to move your ego out of the way, because a lot of times people have things in the world to make sure that everybody thinks that they're okay. When in fact, actually some of the wealthiest people I've known, they don't spend a whole lot of money, not because they're cheap, because they have other interests, right? And so I think this is going to be very, very important going forward, the reality checks. And I think Saturn in Pisces coming up with Neptune in Pisces to Aries is going to be a reality check about, why are you afraid? I'm afraid because I don't have enough coming in. Well, maybe it's because I'm spending $350 a month or a year, $1,500 a year or whatever on streaming services, or,
It's so interesting, this tracking idea, or the budget. To me, I recently got it's like a Fitbit, but it's not quite a Fitbit.
yes,
But to track my steps, just
yes,
to see, because I do a lot of work here. Oh yeah, yay, nice.
all the time.
Yeah, I do all my work here at the computer and stuff. And so I wanted the reality check. How sedentary am I really,
Yes,
especially on days where I'm doing a lot of this? It was scary. It was like 3,000 to 4,000 steps, like nothing.
that's
So
nothing.
I got a walking pad.
Yeah,
I'm now
good.
taking walks, but I didn't know because I didn't have the data. So it's like just measuring these aspects and without being dispassionately. Like I didn't flog myself or berate myself for how sedentary. It's like, oh wow, that's really good information. I'm glad I know that. Now I can do something about it. But that to me is exactly what you're saying about the budget. It's like, okay, what is the reality of what's happening? And where are there levers I can pull? Where are there things I can change? So, all right, so we got it. We need to make budgets.
That's the number one. That's like building a house. If you want a house that's strong, you have to have a good foundation. And if you don't have a budget and you don't know what you're spending and you don't know where your money is coming from, and I know that sounds so un-astrology, unspiritual, but the truth is you can be really spiritually aware if you have control of your finances.
Yeah.
And also, I think can be very clear when something doesn't feel right. Because I also have a very strong moral compass. I think I do. I think I've tried to all my life. And if something doesn't feel right, then I need to ask myself, well, let's put that away for another day and talk about it again. If it's not feeling right, then it's probably not right. Because one of the things about Neptune at the last degrees of Pisces, the red flags, I call this the red flag indicator. Okay. And those of you who are Pisces in the audience know what I'm talking about, especially the more mature Pisces. As a younger Pisces, I never listened to the red flags. They would come up and go, oh, that's interesting. And they would go right back down. And then down the road, you go, oh my God, why didn't I listen to the red flag? Right. The red flag is your tool. It's your crossing guard before you make a decision financially right now, you know. And I think this is going to be very, very important, especially with Neptune, because Neptune, Neptune is Dionysus, is one of the characters. He's Dionysian, and all these planets have two sides. They have a positive side and a more challenging side. Dionysus is the god who is the god of creativity and music and the arts, but he is also the god of ecstasy and madness.
Mm.
People are being very easily influenced right now. I mean, not now, but I mean, about 20 years ago, they would have these all night, Ron Popeil used to sell this overnight rotary thing at night. I know my dad used to watch this in the middle of the night when he was really old. And then everybody would buy this rotary chicken oven thing because it was over and over and over and over again. And you get it and you would never use it, right? So that's the kind of advertising we're seeing right now with a lot of stuff. This is going to help you do this, and this is going to help you do this. This is going to make you feel better with this. This is going to, okay, that adds up.
Right.
And watching how you're being influenced, and step away once in a while from the influence and give yourself a day to make a decision rather than being impulsive and making a decision now. And this is going to be very, very important between the time that Mars goes retrograde in early December. It's already starting to kind of slow down, and goes direct in February and doesn't catch up till May of next year, because Mars retrograde can be impulse buying.
Mm.
So I don't know if I've answered the question.
Well, you have. I mean, we've talked about financially, and we focused a lot on budget. And one of the things from the class that you taught for us, which, by the way, don't impulsively buy this, you guys, but we do have, like, take a day, think about it, see if it's something you really need. But one of the things I learned in your decoding your chart to overcome your blocks to abundance is that budgets will always be something that is so hard for me that I need to call in support. Like, right. I actually need professional support. Like, it will probably always be something that I am horrible at, which is absolutely accurate. Like, I've never been able to do a budget. And so, and you know how it is, those things that where you're like, I don't even know how to do this. I don't know how to even start. So I would resist it with everything, but I love having it. So at Astrology Hub, I love our budget. It's the best thing ever, but I don't do it. It's just great to have the information and the data. So what I love about that class is that you really do hone in on some of the places on our chart where we might have inherent challenges. And so once you're aware of it, then you can create a strategy for actually doing it.
Yeah, yes. Right. Yes. Exactly. Everybody can do it. They just do it differently.
Right.
And you don't always have to do everything yourself. I mean, you're right. Getting help is a nice way to work sometimes if you can't do it. Because I do, like with my two young adult children, they're not that good with it, but they're really happy when I do it with them and we go through. I talk their auditory processing issues, right? So I say, okay, what are you spending on this every year? And they'll tell me because they'll know that, right? But they can't put it together. So there's different ways to do it. And you can make it a family game. I mean, you can make it a game, as long, and the key thing when you're making it a game is not to judge people and not to be angry when you find out they're spending $800 a month on streaming services.
Right. Yes. If you love the wisdom that Georgia has shared today, there's more coming. So we are doing our 9th annual Year Ahead Forecast panel event on December 13th. This is entirely free. We're going to be featuring wisdom from Georgia Stathis, Stormy Grace, Andrea Michelle Kennedy, Rick Levine, Christopher Renstrom. It's going to be an amazing panel. So you are invited. Please go to astrologyhub.com/2025 forecast to reserve your spot now. And Georgia, is there anything you want to leave us with? Any like nuggets of wisdom as we go on our way that you think is important?
Well, I think it's important for us to be patient during this time. I mean, this might be the best gift of this whole process is the issue of patience. Americans aren't usually that patient. I mean, I know non-Americans are watching this, but patience and to allow yourself time to not be doing what you usually do. Just step away. That's going to be very, very important to get back to who you are, because I think when you have this much stuff finishing, a lot of the internal things are finishing inside of each of us. And I think the important thing, if you really want to look at your own charts, is look at your chart. These planets that are changing signs rule a house. And where that planet is changing signs in the house in which it's happening is important to get some information. But you can get so much more information if you incorporate the house that those planets are ruling, because they'll change signs and they'll go back and then they'll change signs. So where is Scorpio in your chart for the Pluto change? Where is Aquarius in your chart for the Uranus change? Where is Pisces in your chart for the Neptune change? Because this is the area that also has to be incorporated when you're trying to get a better picture of what change you might need to be making.
The house it's leaving or the house it's going to?
The house it rules and the house in which it's changing. The house that you see the change taking place is important, because if it's the first house, physically you're changing things. But if it also rules your ninth house, you're physically changing with the first house, but you're changing the way you have your philosophy of life, the ninth house. You incorporate that into the house and where it's happening. So you get like a triple chess or double decker. You get more information that way.
More insight.
Yeah,
yes.
More insight.
Yes.
It's not just the house in which it's happening. It's also the house that it rules. This is something I never learned until the 5 years after I started. I just found it out on my own. Nobody ever taught me that.
That other great class with us on that.
The rulership class, which is one of my favorite classes. Yeah, that's so a really good class.
Really good class.
Yeah, and people should know their rulerships. I feel like Ron Popeil in the chicken rotary machine.
Totally. You need this class. You need it. You cannot go into 2025 without this class.
Yes, and if you order in the next 30 minutes, you will get thus and such.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for being open and curious and wanting to get the information you need to really ride these cosmic waves in a way that can benefit you, can benefit your family, can benefit the people around you, can benefit the world, really. And so many times we get asked, because we are into astrology. So people come to us like, what the heck is going on? What am I supposed to do with my life? So having this information can be so helpful, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. And I know you already know that because you're already experiencing that in your life. So thank you for being here. Georgia, you are amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation.
Being on this platform. We love having you here. Our community loves you.
I love you guys too. You
get voted one of the top requested astrologers all the time. So thank you for being with us. Can't wait to see you again on the forecast panel on December 13th. That is going to be so much fun.
It will be.
And again, thank you all for being here.
And have a great holiday season, everybody.
Yes. All right. Take care, everyone. We'll catch you on the next episode.